Welcome, Husker fans. Thank you for tuning into Big Red Radio, the Husker Talk Show. I am your host, Caleb Jennerett. Next to me, as always, is my co-host, Zach Jennerett. Today, we're going to briefly review the Cincinnati game, things we learned, things people are overreacting to, maybe a little bit, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the Akron game as well, but mostly talk about our thoughts and our outlook for the rest of the season. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like, hit the bell, follow all the socials in the description below. That's where you're going to get all your extra content. Comment down below your biggest concern for the rest of the season, as well as what you're looking forward to seeing also. So, Zach, before we get into it, you were not at the game. I was at the game. The atmosphere was electric, very loud. Took Bennett, my 4-year-old son, and he absolutely loved it. It was a little late, obviously, for him. He fell asleep before we could even get out of the parking lot, but it was a very fun game to be at. Definitely concerning there at the end. Thought, old Nebraska, we find a way to lose that, but Malcolm Hartzog obviously came up big, and our defense held strong like they did all game. So thoughts before we get into it in general?
Yeah, I mean, we're 1-0. At the end of the day, a lot of things happen, but, how many times over the last 7 years have you, been able to say that, right? So you're 1-0 with two games that look winnable. Again, how many times have you been able to realistically say, like, yes, there's a very, very high chance we're going to be 3-0, right?
Yep.
Definitely a couple things to work on, a couple things you like to see, but regardless of all that, came out with the win. So,
yeah. Yeah, so getting right into it, looking at the Cincinnati game, obviously I think we both expected more from both sides of the ball. Going into our biggest concern going forward, our biggest positive we took away from the game, and then in our opinion, the biggest overreaction from Thursday night games that you guys, as well as other Nebraska fans, not every Nebraska fan, but a lot of Nebraska fans are making currently. So I'll let you take it first. What is your biggest concern going forward with this team?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot that people are saying. I think you got to kind of weed through the ones where it's like, if you really dig deep into this, it's not that big of a concern. I think the biggest one is the rush defense, and it has nothing to do with the quarterback. Even if you take Brendan Sorsby's yards out of it, yes, the running backs did not have that many yards on the ground, but you look at average yards per carry. Taway Walker, or whatever his name is, I think averaged 6, almost 7 yards a carry. Other running back averaged 5, almost 6 yards a carry. And that was very evident, right? You could see, when they wanted to run the ball, they would. Why they stopped running the ball so much, I don't know. Because it didn't seem like we ever really found an answer for it. When you start looking at teams down the road like Michigan, Penn State, even, USC, definitely Iowa, those are teams that are going to be run first options. And so if they realize that, they can run at will, then they will, and they will win the game, 27-7, and it will just look like a beatdown on the ground. But that's really my biggest concern, is that the run defense just didn't look evident, even outside of that quarterback run, because that's what everyone's saying, is that, hey, rush defense wasn't that bad. If you look at it, most of the rush yards are, Brendan Sorsby scrambles. But really, I mean, the rush defense to the running backs was, not there.
Yeah. So my biggest concern is kind of a more specific example of what you said, and mine is the D-line size. I think last year we kind of took for granted, Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher, two players that are over 300 pounds, just in the middle of the defense at all times, just stuffing the run every single time. That kind of opened up our linebackers to make big plays and make big tackles in our secondary as well with Deshaun Singleton. We saw a little bit this game, just coming up and being able to make plays in the run game. Jamari Butler as well. I think he was huge in the run game, and we just didn't realize it as much as I think we should. Not that I don't think it's a detriment to this team. It's just the team has to play a different style of defense. You can't stick in a 3-3-5 and force them to try to run it, because they will, and they'll have success doing it, like Zach said. with the quarterback and the running back as well. And then moving on to my biggest positive was the DB room. I think I didn't expect it to be quite as much of a strength as it was. I mean, it's definitely the best room on our defense, maybe on our team. The receivers, I think, are really talented as well. But I think the DBs just completely shut down Cincinnati's pass attack. I don't think Brendan Sorsby is as bad of a passer as we made him out to be. I think as good as our defensive backs were, I think that's why Brendan Sorsby had as many rushing yards as he did. It's because he saw guys weren't open immediately. He knew they weren't going to get open, so he sees an open lane, he takes off. Obviously, that's a problem. But just going back to our DB room, Sierra Wright was locked down the entire game. Deshaun Singleton was coming back and making plays in the back end as well. And then Andrew Marshall, I think, had a really good game also. And then Marquise Buford. And also Donovan Jones had a really good game, coming up and making a few plays around the line of scrimmage as well. So that's my biggest positive. I had one more, but I think you might talk about it. So I'll save that one for you.
Yeah. My biggest positive is just the exact opposite, essentially, of my negative, and that's the rush game, right? I understand that Emmett Johnson was the only one to run the ball, but if you look at it, I mean, the godfather that
Right.
Cincinnati has on the D-line, their fifth-year linebacker, right? That's essentially what everyone said. Like, if Nebraska is going to lose this game, it's going to be because of those two players. And those two players were essentially taken out of the game. And that's huge. And so I guess, like the run game, Emmett Johnson, I think, unless someone did it last year towards the end that I didn't know of, is the first 100-yard rusher since Chubba Purdy 2 years ago against Wisconsin, right? And that's with a run that was 70 yards to the end zone.
Right.
And so it seems evident that, hey, we can run the ball now, right? Like, we can actually, when we want to run the ball, we have a guy that we can do that with. I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done with the O-line in the run game. Looking back, I mean, there's definitely some plays where it's like, hey, Emmett made a guy miss here, but he never should have had to make that guy miss, right? He should be having to make linebackers miss, not D linemen miss. Those guys should be blocked right away. But I think with improvement, I think, if you want to win the big games that I was just talking about, earlier, it all comes down to if you can run the ball.
Yeah. Just a quick little sort of honorable mentions for both of those. For one of my concerns, besides D-line size, which was my biggest concern, was running back depth, which kind of goes into what Zach was saying. The run game looks great. We just need to find someone that can spell him in a little bit. And you heard Holgerson as well as Matt Rule talk about how they need to find that guy to spell. And I think they'll get that ironed out. There was a few plays on Thursday where, you get one extra block and Mosey and Nelson are just gone. And, it didn't work out, obviously, but I think that's what these next two games are for, is to iron out those mistakes. And then another positive that I want to talk about, it's not necessarily a surprising positive. It's one we expected coming into it. But Dylan, I think, played really well. He didn't take any chance. He didn't take that many chances, didn't take many deep shots. But I know a lot of people are using the 3 high safety explanation for it, but I don't think people realize it was literally 3 high safeties playing 10 to 15 yards off the ball every single play. So the deep shots that he did take worked. So that gives me hope, and that gives me clarity that it's going to work. And I tweeted this out on Saturday night right after the LSU and Clemson game. Dylan Raiola at that point was the only quarterback that faced another Power 4 team to throw for over 60% completion, 200 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he threw for almost 80% completion. So a few quarterbacks, Sunday and Monday also got that as well. But that just shows, like, after Thursday, there was a lot of criticism to Dylan. Like, it didn't look great. We expected this big jump out of him, and then the rest of the weekend comes and no quarterbacks really look good. There was a few, as I said, late Saturday with Devin Dampier from Utah, and then CJ Carr and Carson Beck on Monday night, or not on Monday night, Sunday night, also hit that threshold. But other than that, it was pretty much nobody. Josh Hoover, also from TCU. So I think Dylan got a lot of heat on Thursday, and then people forgot about it the rest of the weekend. But I think overall he had one of the best performances that you could ask for. So I think my biggest overreaction is actually something Zach already mentioned as his concern, the rushing defense as a whole. I think John Butler said it perfectly in his press conference a couple days ago. Zach mentioned, and I agree with it, the QB scramble was an issue, but you're just not going to see that. Like, he knew his receivers were locked down. It was a quick trigger, wasn't even reading. He just took off. And that needs to be addressed, and I think it will be. But also, look at our schedule. Like, who do we play that can do that? Bryce Underwood can do it. Last week against New Mexico, he had -5 rushing yards. Didn't even try to run. Aiden Childs is one I would worry about. He's an electric runner. Jaden Maiev, maybe. I think he's more of an opportunistic runner than a true burner. Nico at UCLA is going to run, but he's going to be running for his life the whole game, I think. I don't think there's much around him. Gronowski from Iowa, the way he looks, I don't even know if he's going to be the Iowa quarterback by the time Nebraska plays him, but he's more of a power guy than an escape guy, so not really worried about him either. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be a concern, because you never know if you want to get to where you want to get to. You're going to play these guys in the playoffs. You're going to play these guys in bowl games. But I don't think it's as big of an issue as people are making it out to be. Also, it was week 1, and you saw later in the game, running backs weren't breaking off these chunk plays. I think in the fourth quarter, there may have been one over 10 yards, and that's what you like to see. With our undersized D-line, you want to see these athletes make plays. Vincent Shavers made the PFF all week 1 team, so I think he's going to have a really big impact. He's going to play more snaps. He was injured a little bit later in camp, so that probably held him back from starting and being that true guy there. But I think our rush defense is going to get better, especially with these next 2 weeks. It needs to, going into Michigan, because we know they're going to run the ball, but I'm confident that it will.
Yeah, I think my biggest overreaction is one that I think we both kind of fell into before the game, and that's that Cincinnati just flat out wasn't that good, right? We got warned. Nebraska fans were warned by some other Big 12 teams that, hey, like, the Cincinnati team, like, yeah, they're not great, but they're not one to mess around with. They're like, yeah, that Brennan Sorsby, yeah, like, he's a gamer. Compare him a lot to, like, Luke Altmaier. I think that's as far as like style goes, right? He's never going to be like a super big burner, right? He's not like Lamar Jackson, but overall he's just a gamer, right? He's not great in any area, but he's always going to go out there and do what it takes to win the game. Obviously their tight end's a stud. Dante Corleone's a stud. Their linebacker's a stud. That was a team. That was a good team, right? And you look at if we score on the 1 yard line instead of getting a false start, right? We don't give up a big drive with a huge play, a huge run out of Brennan Sorsby to really get them in position to score. Like, you're looking at more of like a realistic, like 24-10 kind of game, right? Which I think if it was 24-10, like, we're all sitting here going, hey, like, this team is exactly what we thought it would be. Can't wait for this. Like, we're going to beat Michigan. But just because a couple things happened here and there that are, week 1 blunders that will get addressed and I think will get fixed over these next 2 weeks, now we're saying that, hey, we're back to this 5-7 team or back to this 6-6 team. Like, I think everyone's overreacting a little bit about how good Cincinnati really is, or I guess their overreaction is that Cincinnati was a bad team, right?
Right.
Because they're not at all. And that Cincinnati team is one that can compete in the Big 12. So,
yeah, no, they definitely have some good players. And you mentioned the tight end, Joe Royner, and he was held to 3 catches for 11 yards. So they got nothing in the passing game. And I forgot to mention it when I was talking about the defensive backs, but something that should have made sense, shouldn't have been a surprise. Our defensive coordinator was an NFL secondary coach. Probably is going to be pretty good at coaching the secondary. Our secondary is filled with older guys. I think the only younger guy there is Donovan Jones playing, and he's playing quite a bit, but he's playing well. Sierra Wright, I think, still has eligibility, following this year. So I think it should have made sense to us. Addison Williams, our DB's coach, was a former DC. Like, these are really good coaches in there. And I think, we have a new D-line coach, a brand new D-line. It makes sense that those guys would struggle in week 1. But I think it's really valuable that you can learn from all these mistakes and still win the football game. I think in years past, Minnesota in week 1 a couple years ago, you learned what was wrong and you lost the football game. That's a pretty similar game to what we just saw. It just turned out that Nebraska found a way to lose it instead of Nebraska finding a way to win it like they did this time. So you got anything
Correct.
else on the Cincinnati game before we get into the Akron game?
I don't.
Yeah, so moving on to the Akron game, really, I mean, we're not going to talk about all these matchups. We know what this game should look like. Baseline, if Nebraska needs to score over 30 and they need to hold them under 10. Wyoming just shut them out. So I'm not worried about Akron's offense, knock on wood, obviously. We have some serious problems if Akron finds some ways to succeed against our first string offense. If our backups come in and Akron all of a sudden finds a way to, move the ball and score a little bit, I'm not taking anything away from that. But our offense needs to be efficient. Our offense needs to have a really good day through the air, explosive, and I think some running backs need to get going as well. So Vegas odds as of Wednesday night when we're recording this against Akron. Nebraska's favored by 34.5 with an over-under of 47.5, meaning Vegas is predicting a 40-7 win for Nebraska. As I said, this game shouldn't be in question after the first quarter. And it's tough to make a prediction on this because I don't know if our starters are going to be playing much into the second half after the third quarter. So just to throw one out, I think 44-3, Nebraska wins. I think Akron scores late against the backups. I think their starters stay in pretty much the whole game. What I really want to see is the running backs behind Emmett, whether it's Mackay, Mosey, or Ives. I think someone needs to step up to that number 2 spot and make some plays. Maybe all 3 of them make some plays. I just need to see some depth truly stand out there.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Vegas is right on with this one. I think it's going to be 42-7. Is going to be my prediction. I do know Akron's got a transfer at quarterback. Obviously, he didn't do anything against Wyoming, which Wyoming is a team that's worse than Cincinnati, right?
That's an understatement. Way worse.
Probably by a large margin. But I don't know, like. You wanna look at like things that I want to see. It's Dylan. I want Dylan to go out there and show that hey, I can play 3 quarters and put up a good enough stat line to where my guys can go in. I want to see the defense have a field day out there, right? I want to see this because the one thing you hear about this athletic small D line is like, hey, we're not going to fill the gaps like we did last year, but man, are we going to come off the edge, get into the quarterback? Like, I want to see that, right? Because that's what's going to win you football games. Getting people behind the sticks is going to make it way harder in the Big Ten because we all know it. Like, the Big Ten just isn't an explosive league, right? You look at, like, the Big 12 and probably some of the SEC teams, like, those are, like, explosive teams. Like, the way they're scoring is 30, 40-plus yard plays. Yep. The way the Big Ten scores, like, it's drive it down your throat, chunk plays here, chunk plays there. If you can get someone behind the sticks, it makes it that much harder to, continue drives. Like, it's a real drive killer doing that. And so I want to see that we are actually able to do that as well. And then I also want to see, Ja'Cory Barney get some good punt returns back there because I feel like he just got killed. I do feel like we had the block on most of the time, but I want to see us set up like a real return and see him get back there and get some good returns as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And one more thing I want to mention, I think it's really important, I don't want to do the thing where, you look ahead and then you lose to one of these teams. I don't see that happening. I don't see us losing to one of these teams. These are truly like bottom of the barrel. No offense to Akron, no offense to Houston Christian, but these are truly bottom of the barrel.
Houston Christian did have a big win.
Yeah, over another FCS team. I'm not worried about them at all. But these 2 games are huge in terms of, getting your confidence. I don't think they lost any confidence, but getting your confidence up, getting these minor issues ironed out because Michigan is coming to town in week 4. Nebraska doesn't leave Lincoln for the next 3 weeks. So I'm 4 weeks, I think, because I think there's a bye week and then Michigan State afterwards, I think, is in Nebraska too. So I am very excited to see what Nebraska can do over these next 2 weeks, and especially in this game as well, especially because, Michigan has a big game this week against Oklahoma. I personally think Michigan's going to lose that game. I hope they win just because it'll look better for Nebraska when they come into town. But, yeah, Zach, you got anything else before we sign it off?
That's it.
All right, make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like, hit the bell, comment down below your score predictions for tonight for this week's game. Follow all the socials in the description below. But without further ado, go Big Red.